At its peak in 2020, Among Us was the most popular game in the world, peaking at over 400,000 concurrent players on Steam. But nowadays, it only sits at 4,000 and continues to drop each month. But why? Was it just the right game at the right time? Or did the developers ruin their chance to make Among Us a long-term success? The real question is, how'd this simple mobile game become so popular in the first place? My name is Frez, and today I'm going to be taking you through the rise and fall of the biggest game of 2020, Among Us. If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe down below. It all started in 2017, when an independent game studio known as Innersloth began production on a new game titled Space Mafia. Innersloth was known for the Henry Stickmin collection, a series of choose-your-adventure point-and-click games that blew up on YouTube thanks to their unique art style and entertaining gameplay.
Oh, yeah.
That success allowed them to pursue a new title, based on the famous party game Mafia, which involves a group of innocents trying to vote out a secret Mafia member who kills one of them each round. This game would be known as Among Us. Among Us was a space-themed social deduction game, first released on June 15th, 2018. The concept of the game was simple. Each player was an armless astronaut who took on the role of either a crewmate or an imposter. The imposter's goal was simple: work together to kill or eject all the crewmates without being caught and voted out. The crewmates could either win by voting out the imposters or by completing enough tasks around the map, like fixing wires or emptying the trash chute. Each round, the crewmates would go about their tasks until a dead body was found and reported, or an emergency meeting is called. Once this happens, the players can discuss any suspicions they have and decide to eject one player from the game. This continues until all imposters are voted out or all crewmates are killed. The first map released with the game was the Skeld, a space station that added a few more features for both sides to work with. For the crewmates, a camera room was created that allowed you to monitor the movements of other players at various points in the map, which helped with figuring out who the killers were. For the imposters, they were able to sabotage various key systems around the map that would impair the player's ability to complete the tasks. The doors and lights could be shut off to lock players out of key areas or lose track of their friends in the dark, allowing for easy kills. Sabotaging the oxygen or reactor systems would set off an alarm in the map, forcing players to reset the system in 30 seconds or risk losing the game. Among Us played like a murder mystery game, rewarding players for being deceitful and persuasive.
I saw Simon's head run into his room and then there was a dead body! You're so dumb!
However, even though its core gameplay was fun and interesting, Among Us completely bombed on release, as it lacked many key features that hampered its success. The game had no audio or multiplayer on release, meaning the only way to play it was with a large group of friends. The marketing for the game was even worse. No trailers or ads were ever made. Even simple quality of life features, like the kick and ban option or customizable characters, didn't exist at the time. For the first few months, Among Us averaged less than 50 active players, and the game was left to die. Fortunately, those who did play Among Us seemed to really enjoy it, so Innersloth continued its development of the game, adding those missing features like audio, online servers, and 2 new maps, Mira HQ and Polis, both released in late 2019. The player base grew to a few hundred monthly players, but from a financial standpoint, the game was still losing money. Fortunately, Innersloth stuck with it, putting out regular updates as often as once a week. Eventually, this work and dedication to Among Us paid off big time. Thanks to the impact of COVID-19, the world was grinded to a halt in early 2020. While this greatly impacted many industries like tourism and entertainment, staying at home helped grow the online world tremendously. Both Twitch and YouTube saw a huge boom in users, and since there was no way to interact with people in person, online collaborations between creators became commonplace. Interactive multiplayer games like Fall Guys and Phasmophobia were extremely successful, with collab videos being made by all the top gaming YouTubers. Even chess, a board game that's been around for thousands of years, exploded online, spawning the careers of many now infamous chess creators.
Sacrifice.
And holding creator events like PogChamps that reached absurd numbers on Twitch.
I'm not sure that I like the variational approach here.
No, please don't.
But no game had a bigger explosion than Among Us. In June of 2020, Among Us was averaging 600 monthly players, a slow but steady improvement over the last 18 months. In July, the game was first discovered by Sodapoppin, legendary Twitch streamer with over 8 million followers.
This stupid game called Among Us. Like,
Don't call it a stupid game. It's great.
now how do you play it? What do you do?
He started to play the game with just a few close friends, but then invited other popular streamers to join in like XQC and Hassan. From there, the game took off, jumping from 2,000 monthly players in July all the way to 150,000 players in September, reaching a peak of 440,000. Among Us instantly took over YouTube and Twitch, with every popular creator known to man making videos on it. Whether it was YouTube staples like Mr. Beast, PewDiePie, and Valkyrie, or relative newcomers like Ludwig and Corpse Husband, all of them found major success streaming the game on Twitch and YouTube. All eyes were on Among Us, since not only was it fun and easy to learn, but it brought the most popular creators together at a time where it was nearly impossible to do so. And the leader of this Among Us hype train was Offline TV. Offline TV was a social media group filled with some of the biggest content creators in the world, like Pokimane, Lily Pichu, and Michael Reeves. Their Among Us lobbies were by far the most popular, with all the top creators trying to squeeze their way in. Offline TV and their members experienced insane growth, with Disguised Toast, Saikuno, and Pokimane all jumping over 1 million subscribers in the span of just a few months, all thanks to Among Us. Among Us became the biggest hit of the year, spawning numerous memes and merchandise along with a new dedicated fanbase. Innersloth was poised to carry the success for years to come, but as quickly as it blew up, the decline of Among Us was just as swift. In August of 2020, right at the peak of Among Us' success, Innersloth announced their plans to release a sequel, Among Us 2, sometime in 2021. The main reason for this was because Among Us was poorly built. It was difficult to add new features and maps to the game without it breaking existing features. Its servers were also struggling, since the recent explosion of the game had caused the developers to scramble for more bandwidth. The idea of a sequel excited fans, but only a month after it was officially announced, Among Us 2 was cancelled, with Innersloth stating they shifted their focus towards updating the existing game rather than make an entirely new one. While this didn't seem like a big deal at the time, Innersloth spending a month trying to develop a new game was not something they could afford. Their development team was extremely small, consisting of only 5 members at the time, which meant that updates and bug fixes would take much longer than usual. And while Among Us was finally financially successful, they knew that the success would not last forever, and unfortunately, they were right. The simplicity of Among Us was a key factor in its insane rise, but it's also the main reason why the game didn't last. The gameplay loop was great for a while, and playing with different people kept the game fresh and exciting, but eventually, the hype died down, and streamers started shifting their focus back to their normal content. It wasn't that the game was bad all of a sudden, but keeping people's attention long term is hard, especially when no new maps or features were being added. In only 5 months, Among Us went from its peak of 176,000 monthly players to just 16,000. Among Us had a small and dedicated community, but there were no more eyes on the game, which made it difficult to grow. Innersloth released a big update in April 2021, with a new map called the Airship, a direct inspiration from their Henry Stickmin games. The map featured multiple levels and brand new tasks, along with the ability to spawn in multiple locations, adding an extra layer of nuance to the game. The update stopped the bleeding for a moment, increasing the game's player count for the first time in months, but it didn't last long. They even got Jimmy Fallon and some of the Stranger Things kids to play it. But you know a game's dead when Jimmy Fallon plays it.
Oh my gosh! No!
Okay.
No!
In November, the devs would add new roles to the game for the first time. For the crewmates, there were 3 new roles: the engineer, the scientist, and the guardian angel. The engineer can hop through vents like an imposter. The scientist has a vitals monitor he can routinely check to see if anyone's died, and the guardian angel is given to the first dead crewmate, enabling him to pick one player to save from death. The shapeshifter role allowed the imposter to transform into another player, potentially framing them for a kill if they get caught. These roles were great additions to the game and saw a small increase in players for a few months, but it was too little too late. Among Us would slowly fade further and further into obscurity and would settle around 5,000 to 6,000 monthly players. The heights that Among Us reached were long gone, but this wasn't the end of the story just yet. The community that was formed around Among Us would take matters into their own hands in 2022. Various different mods of the game were created, introducing new roles, maps, and game modes to keep the game fresh. The most famous of which was the Town of Salem mod, porting over various crewmate, imposter, and neutral roles from the popular deduction game Town of Salem, like the werewolf, the mayor, the medic, and the jester. These mods brought life to Among Us in a different way, all thanks to the Sidemen. The Sidemen are the biggest YouTube group in the world, with over 30 million subscribers across all channels. Their second channel, More Sidemen, consists mainly of gaming and challenge videos, the most popular of which being their Among Us videos. The Sidemen, along with various special guests like Laserbeam, Lachlan, and other British YouTubers, consistently put out Among Us videos showing off these mods to their huge fan base. They're some of the most entertaining videos the Sidemen make, and garner tens of millions of views per video. These videos are single-handedly keeping Among Us alive, proving to people that you can still create enjoyable content on the game even all these years later.
Wait, what?
Don't know.
Wait.
What?
Wait, Jamie got 3 kills in a row.
Among Us now sits at around 4,000 monthly players, and while that number's much less than its peak, it's still in the top 200 games on Steam, which is pretty impressive. Among Us was a simple game about lying, deceit, and persuasion. It took an already established genre and created a unique and fun experience that you could play with friends. But the success of Among Us never relied on its gameplay. It was merely a platform to bring people's favorite creators together at a time where everyone needed it. Among Us was never meant to last. It was merely the result of a growing online community and a fanbase in need of collaborative content. And while the Among Us trend is probably gone forever, that's okay, because you can't call the game a failure when it was never meant to succeed in the first place.